Working on the tail stand for the airplane. I need to be able to get it up and adjust it to where the tail's level to get the wings rigged right and everything. Well, I'm trying to come up with an idea how to do that, and the idea I've got right now is to make a little jack out of a screw. I went to town to look for a piece of all thread and they didn't have any, but I've got this 3/4 inch galvanized carriage bolt, and I'm going to turn the head of this off because I'm going to weld this onto a plate that mounts onto the tail post of the airplane. I'm going to turn this head off, and then I think I'm going to turn the galvanizing off of that so that I can weld that. I don't have to worry about that. So I'll get that mounted up here in the lathe, and we'll get started at that. Makes that into a stud with a long threaded shank on it. Now I've got a piece of 3/4 inch black pipe, and I'm going to want to turn that down so that it slips in the end of this tube, this pipe here, and then I'll weld that in there, and that'll be a socket for this to go down into, and then we'll put a nut on the end of it, and that'll run that up and down and adjust the height of this stand, hopefully. Okay, let's see what we got here. $130. Alright, take that out of there and see if we can get it to fit in that tube then, that pipe. We'll cut that pipe off, that tube off. Get me a clean end on it, and then see how that works. Because it's got to be cleaned up before I can weld it anyway. Well, I took that tube that I'm going to use for the stand, that pipe, took it down to the hanger, and I measured off what I was going to need on that for height, and I figured about 3 feet. I cut that off on the bandsaw at 3 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and true that end up, and because this is a welded pipe, it's got a seam on the inside of it. That's probably why that piece of pipe that I went for a liner wouldn't fit in there. So I'm going to true this end up, and I'm going to scratch this rust off of it here on the outside so it makes a better weld, and then I'm going to go ahead and bore that welded seam out of there so that tube fits down in there better. Okay, I'll go ahead and just clean up that inside. Alright, that fits in there. Alright, I think I'm going to cut this off and face that so I have a nice flat spot for that nut and washer to ride on. But I'm going to go ahead and face off the other end of this one first. This will be welded onto a bracket that attaches to the tail of the airplane, where the tail wheel normally attaches, the tail wheel spring. And then that'll fit down through this bushing here, and then I'll be able to adjust this up and down, and then this bushing goes into that other tube there, the bigger tube gets welded into it. Okay, that's the way it'll work there. This piece of pipe that I just milled down, machined down, that goes into that pipe, gets welded into it, and then this goes into it, and then this pipe will be welded onto something on the floor. My design for this tail stand for the airplane keeps adapting, I guess you could say evolving. I was originally going to use some of this tubing here like this size, which is 1.25 inch OD. I don't know whether it's pipe or tubing, it doesn't make any difference. Anyway, that was what I was going to use for the stand for that, with a bolt in here for a jack and then attached to the tail of the airplane. This would be stand on the ground on a stand. But that bolt only gives me 6 inches or so of adjustment on it, on the threads. I got thinking it'd be nice if I could shorten up this length and instead of having it 3 feet and having it close to the height that I wanted for the tail, it'd be nice to be able to adjust it up and down. So I was thinking about sleeving that in a larger diameter piece. This piece of 1.25" tubing that I got came off of these old bleachers that they tore up out of the high school gym. We were able to salvage some of that metal out of that. And that's what I made these sawhorses, or these work stands out of, is this larger diameter tube that's also attached to that. I remembered I had some of that, so I just went and dug some of that out. And this tube should slide inside of this tube. Stuff's been out in the weather forever, and it's all rusty. The easiest way to get this taken care of is just to blow these nuts off of there. Alright, I'll get a punch and a hammer and knock those pins out of there. Alright, this piece will slide right in that piece there just fine. So that'll work. So since I've got the torch out here, I might as well do one more thing. Now, my original plan was to take this bolt, the stud that I made, and weld it into a piece of angle like this that would bolt up to the landing gear pad on the airplane. Well, after thinking about it, if I have all this stuff, the solid, all welded up, it's pretty rigid. But as you change the height of the tail of that airplane up, it rotates about the main gear area, so it pivots. So it's constantly going to be changing its geometry in relation to the ground. And so it would like to be able to pivot that, to have this stand pivot a little bit. So what I've decided to do, I've got another piece of angle in there. I'm going to go ahead and fix it up, bolt up to the bottom of the tail wheel mount pad on the airframe. And then I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to weld this in here, and then I'm going to bolt that on the web of that angle so that it'll pivot back and forth a little bit here. When I change the geometry, when I adjust this up and down, it'll be free to pivot a little bit. So I'm going to round these corners off on this while I've got the torch out here. And this is the piece that I've got to make the pad to go up to mount to the airframe. And it's a lot bigger than it needs to be, so I may as well cut it off, and I'll trim this off a little bit and lighten that piece up. As long as I've got the torch out, might as well do that now. I was going to do that with a hacksaw, but this is a lot easier. Okay. Right, here's the original tube that I worked on the lathe, and this was set up with this piece of black pipe fit in there for bushing in there, a sleeve, and then this bolt fit in there to adjust up and down. You can see there's only less than 6 inches of adjustment on that. Okay, there that goes. So this will get welded in there now for that sleeve, for this to fit in. I think I've got this more or less figured out now, what I'm going to do here. This is what I've got for the base. This is a piece of, I don't know what that is, that's 3/8 inch angle iron, and I don't know where that came from. I found it out in the scrap pile. Got that, I'm going to glue it onto this. This is a brake rotor. This came off of a truck that I had. Got my Century 130 wire feed welder out with some 030 flux core wire. This will be the base, and I've got a hole drilled in it here. That tube that I just cut up has got a pinched part on it already, where it's pinched together, where it'll fit there to pivot a little bit, where I can attach it to this. That's the plan so far. Okay, that's welded up. That should be a pretty good base. I can't take it off. Anyway, that's good enough. Okay, so now I'm going to weld this stud into here. The last bit that I need to weld is this little bushing that I made into this tube. This is where the bolt rides in there. Okay, well that's the way this goes now. If this go into here like that, this will bolt up underneath the plane. This will slide down in that other tube. So now I've got to slide this down in that other tube and drill holes through it for pins. Well, this is the support pipe mounted here up on the drill press. I lined up the holes. There were already holes through this larger pipe, and I lined those up with a drill. And then I've got this center pipe support in there, and drilling holes through it approximately every inch or so, or a couple inches. It's not doing any precise measuring on it, but so this can give me adjustments out on this tube to adjust the length of it, kind of rough adjustments, and then we'll do the fine adjustment with the screw on the top. Alright, there's the contraption all assembled. This piece here will bolt onto the tail, and it's got a little bit of movement on it. We can tighten it up so it's pretty tight. This piece here will be able to move. This is the adjustment, and then there's the height adjustment, the rough height adjustment here. Put that pin in there like that. See how that works.